this episode, we're going to go over the mistakes that you should not make as a beginner to WordPress. So welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick Foy, the founder of Nick Foy TV, where we cover websites, marketing, investing, real estate. So today we're talking websites. I am here logged into my dashboard, nicksdemowebsite.com. It's just a fake website I made up for these tutorials to show you guys different things in WordPress. So I've already set up my website. I'm inside WordPress, and we can see the different dashboard items down the side here. So the first mistake a lot of beginners make when they start their website is they forget to change the permalink settings. So if we go under settings and we go to permalinks, you're going to see that by default you're going to be under the plain checkbox here, which is https nicksdemowebsite.com/?p=123. So what this means is this is code for what page ID got assigned to different pages. So if you create on a home page, an about page, a contact page, so you create these different pages for your website. Each one's going to get its own ID, and that's going to be the URL structure to find that page on the internet. And that's going to be very confusing. Instead, we'd rather change to post name. So whatever the page name is. So nicksdemowebsite.com/blog or nicksdemowebsite.com/about. So these are going to be the actual page names that get put into the URL here. And that brings us to tip number 2. We also don't want to have a very long URL permalink. So if we go in here to posts, and I'm going to go ahead and click on add new just to open up an example one. So if I was creating a page or a blog post from scratch, and I was going to give it a title, let's say how to train your dog to roll over. So this is a pretty long blog post title. Now by default, when I click save draft, it's going to go ahead and create my example page URL known as a permalink. So this would be the URL people would have to type into to find this particular page. So you can see here the URL is quite long. I have nicksdemowebsite.com/how to train your dog to roll over. So it's pretty long. So what we would recommend, a mistake a lot of people make, is not shortening up this URL before you hit publish. So what you need to do first is just click on edit, and now we can go in here and we can adjust this URL and just call it dog-training, for example, if I wanted to shorten it up. So now I'm going to hit OK, and now I could go ahead and click save draft, or I could click publish. Now a mistake a lot of beginners make is they'll go ahead and edit this URL after they've already published their page. And this causes a couple issues. Number one, if I change this to dog training tips, and I clicked OK and I clicked publish, what that's going to do is it's going to reset this link. So this is the new link people have to come to find this page. Now, if this page has already been shared on social media, if it's linked to on other pages on my website, if it's linked to on other people's websites that are linking to your website, it's going to mess that link up. And when people click on it, it's going to bring them to an error page. So they're not actually going to get taken to the proper page they're trying to get to learn how to train their dog. So that's why it's important to make sure you edit this permalink before we hit publish. Once we hit publish, if we decide we need to edit this link, then we're going to need to do something called a redirect. And that's anytime somebody types in that old URL of dog training, that's going to redirect them to the new proper URL of dog training tips. So if you do end up changing a URL down the road after you've already published a page, make sure you set up a redirect. And you can do so by just installing redirect URL plugins under the add new plugins. So we can just come here to search, type in redirect, and click search, and we'll see what plugins come up. So redirection is, so this is an example, we just click install now, and we can go ahead and set up redirection URLs so that your website doesn't take them to the wrong link. So those are the first 2 mistakes beginners will make when setting up their WordPress website. They'll have the wrong permalink structure, and they might have too long of URLs, or they might change the URLs later on after they've already published a page. And this is how you're going to break your website, and links are going to take you to the wrong pages. All right, tip number 3, the mistake to avoid making is to have incomplete or unfinished website pages published live to your website. So if you begin building a new page by going to add new under pages, and if I started going into, let's say, my page builder called Elementor, and I started designing this web page, what I would not want to do is click that publish button until I am sure that this page is done. And the reason for that is if we have an incomplete page and people come to our website, they're going to see the incomplete page. Once it's published, it's live, it's out there, it exists. Somebody can find it. You may not think they can find it, but a lot of times web pages are indexed into Google, into Yahoo, into Bing, different search engines, and people will come across them just searching these different search engines. So if they happen to be on Google one day, they might accidentally come across your website. Or for example, if it's your homepage and you haven't finished your homepage yet, don't make it live yet. Don't switch it out and make it your homepage until it's complete and finished. That's going to help avoid having users land on your website and find broken, incomplete, unfinished pages. All right, tip number 4 is not setting a strong enough password. So once you've created your WordPress login and you've logged into your account, the next step is to go under users and you can find your profile. And under your profile, you're going to be able to scroll down and find the account management section where you can set a new password. So when you set up your WordPress website, if you put in a very low letter count or a very weak password, I would recommend changing your password and making it something stronger. So when you click set new password, they're going to generate this very intense and confusing password. So I would just go with the default generated password that they set up for you, that they will generate here for you, and copy paste that as your new password and save it in your Google Passwords or save it somewhere on your computer so you can reference it later in case you forget it, since it's got lots of letters, numbers, and characters to make it very hard and confusing. So the purpose of having a good strong password is that WordPress websites are known to get hacked. There are hackers out there who spend all day trying to get into websites so they can install code that is either viruses or malware or some sort of other hack to mess those websites up. And to avoid having security issues with your website, you can start by making sure you have a strong password. Okay, mistake number 5 is installing too many plugins. So you can see my website right now only has 4 plugins. Now that's because it's a brand new website and I haven't got around to adding all the traditional plugins that I would typically use to build my website. However, I don't want to add too many plugins because some beginners will get on here and they'll just go into the plugin library by clicking add new here. And when they get into that plugin library and they get on the featured page or the popular page, they literally will go down the list and just start installing a bunch of different plugins. And before you know it, you can come back into your plugins page and you'll have over 30 or 40 different plugins installed. And the problem with having this many plugins is it slows down your website. Every time a web page loads, whether you realize it or not, there's plugin code being loaded. So when you have 40 different plugins installed and activated on your website, your web pages have to load code for all those different plugins typically, and this is going to cause load times to slow down on your website. And then pages are going to load slower and people are going to get more frustrated because the content's not coming up quickly on your website, and they're going to get annoyed with how slow things are acting. So when you're in here looking through different plugins, make sure you're installing only the most necessary plugins that you need to operate and run your website. And if you want, you can install some basic plugins like Siteground Optimizer, I think the WordPress Starter Pack. Some of those plugins are kind of bundled where they have lots of different features under one plugin, so you don't have to install 10 different plugins to get 10 different features. Instead, sometimes simple plugins have 5 or 6, 10 different features, whatever the number be, all under one plugin, and that can help save you some space and loading lots of different plugins. All right, mistake number 6 is not updating your plugins. So every plugin that you download is going to at some point need updated. You can see the different versions here. We have version 1.6, version 3.0.15, and we can see who the plugin author is: WordPress contributors, Elementor.com, WordPress developer, Siteground. So when these developers create new versions of the plugin, things that fix bugs, they fix different things wrong with the plugin each time a new WordPress update comes out, then they're going to update their plugins as well. So you're going to see your plugins get out of date. There's going to be a little message notifying you that your plugin's out of date. So it's important that you keep your plugins updated. This will help avoid your website breaking down and having broken pages because of plugin malfunctions. So one of the new features WordPress has allowed is enabling auto updates. So you can enable auto updates for your different plugins, and this will make sure that these plugins automatically update, so you don't have to worry about logging in every week or every month to your website to check if there's new updates available. Instead, you can let it kind of run on autopilot behind the scenes, and you'll know that your website should be up to date by enabling auto update. All right, mistake number 7 is uploading image files that are way too large in file size. So here I've clicked on an example image, I can come in here and check its file size, and I can see that it's only 90 kilobytes. So when we get to 1,000 kilobytes, it becomes a megabyte. And a megabyte is a very large file size. I try to keep all my image file sizes in the kilobytes, so under 1,000 kilobytes. That way we don't get into megabytes. So the way to do this is you can resize your images before you get into WordPress. So this one, for example, I just optimized it using a image resizer tool called bulkresizePhotos.com. So if you go to bulkresizePhotos.com, you can click choose image. You can find an image off your computer, and then you can choose what size you want to resize it to. So you can either resize it based on pixels. So for example, if this one is 1280 by 853, that means it is 1280 pixels wide and it is 853 pixels tall. So I could cut this dimension in half down to 600 by 400 if I resized using 50% scaling over here on the tool. Now what that's going to do is resize the dimensions, and it's also going to shrink the file size. Now if I don't want to resize the dimensions, I can just keep the dimensions as is by setting it at 100%, so it doesn't resize the dimensions. But it'll still go in and optimize the file size, and it'll try to shrink this 90 kilobytes down even further. So if you notice you have an image that's 2 or 3 megabytes in size, and it might be 3,000 or 4,000 pixels wide and 3,000 and 4,000 pixels tall, you can shrink it down to under 2,000 pixels wide and under 2,000 pixels tall, and that's also going to shrink the file size, hopefully down into the kilobytes instead of megabytes. Alright, tip number 8 is to make sure you are optimizing website speed. A lot of beginners forget about website speed, and they don't know that they can check it when they're building their pages. So keeping an eye on website speed is going to be crucial to making sure you're building the web pages for performance optimization. So what we can do is we can use a tool like GTmetrix. So if you go to gtmetrix.com, we can enter in our website. So I'm going to type in Nick's demo website.com, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on the test your site, and it's going to go ahead and analyze my website. So it's going to analyze the home page, since that's the URL that I typed in was my home page. Now if I wanted to analyze a blog article or another page, then I would need to enter that specific URL. So if you're building each page one at a time, it might make sense as you get done building each page to throw it in this URL analyzer to see how big your page is and how fast it loads. So we're going to get a report back that's going to show us what our speed was. So we've got 1.1 loading seconds is what it took to load. We can get a grade, so I got a grade A, 96% performance, 100% structure. So you can go into the performance and structure tabs to see any improvements that you need to make. So we can see here, first contentful paint. This is when the first things on the page started to appear within 1 second, and then the website page became interactive where users could start scrolling within 1.1 seconds. So as you test your pages, if you're noticing that your page is showing it's taking 10 seconds before somebody finally sees the first image or the first text on the page, that's probably way too long. Ideally, you want your website pages to load in under 3 seconds. So 1.1 seconds is very fast. Now the reason is my home page is blank right now. I don't have any content on it, so that's why it's loading fast. So as I add images, videos, installing more plugins, those sort of things, it's going to make the page size larger, and it's going to take longer to load because it's going to have more actions that it has to run each time it loads the page. Alright, so that's going to be it for today's video on the top 8 mistakes beginners make with starting a WordPress website. Things that you can keep track of and work hard to try to avoid so that you can make sure your website is running at good optimization and avoid errors on your website. For more videos, you can check out my YouTube channel, Nick Foy TV. Just click over here onto the playlist or browse my most recent uploads here to see more tutorials on things like websites, Pinterest, real estate investing, and stock market investing. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you guys in the next upload.